So I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Board of Education today, January 27th at noon. First item on our agenda is to approve the minutes. In front of you, you have the January 9th regular meeting minutes as well as the January 24th emergency meeting minutes. Let's start with the January 9th. If you could take a look, and when could someone give me a motion to approve the January 9th minutes? Sherry. Second. Hazel. All those in favor? Sangeeta? Oh, you weren't here?
Staying.
Okay, so it's a majority of the quorum, so, yes. So we got, there's 4 of us. Did you get that?
2 abstentions.
Okay, so moving on to the January 24th emergency meeting. If I could get a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, so we got Penny and Sangeeta. All those in favor? Okay, it's a majority of those in attendance in the quorum. Okay, thank you. All right. If I could have you look at the agenda of today's meeting, and if you're okay with the agenda, if I could get a motion to approve the agenda. Sherry. Second. Jen. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker with a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Do I have anyone wishing to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to our action items. The first item in our action items is the New Canaan All Sports Booster Club donation in the amount of $9,800. I think you all received information about that donation in your Friday notes. So if I'll ask for a motion to approve, and we can have discussion if anyone has discussion, but if I could get a motion to approve a donation in the amount of $9,800 to purchase the cardiovascular equipment for the New Canaan High School Fitness Center. Sherry. Second. Hazel. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's proposed budget, second read. At our January 9th meeting, we had a first reading of the superintendent's budget and proposed budget, and today is the second read, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Alexi for some additional discussion on the proposed budget.
Excellent, thank you, and thank you for everyone for being here today. I know 12 o'clock on a Friday afternoon may not be the most convenient time for most of us, so thank you for rearranging your schedules to be here. Just as a reminder, we're meeting today on Friday afternoon at 12 o'clock because the regularly scheduled Board of Ed meeting on Monday evening was canceled due to weather. We had an ice storm move through, and so we canceled that meeting. But the time-sensitive nature of the budget drove us to look to reschedule it as a special meeting, which is why we're here today. Thank you for that. I thought what we would do to begin our discussion of the budget, as you know, on January 9th, the superintendent's proposed budget was presented to the Board of Ed. And I thought that we'd begin today just by hitting a couple of questions that have come into us from board members. You have in front of you a packet with a number of questions, and I don't want to take the time to read all of those to you, but I thought I'd hit a couple of areas of interest. If there's anything else that I haven't spoken about that you'd like to ask, feel free. But then after going through this, I'd like to ask Dr. Keating to share with us some highlights and some changes that have occurred even from the superintendent's proposed budget on the 9th to today. And other questions and issues or topics or anything else you'd like to discuss. We have members of our administrative staff here. We have folks representing SACs and technology and certainly facilities and others. Lizette will be joining us as well to represent, answering the questions around the English language learner position. Whether it's ironic or not, right now she couldn't be with us at 12 because she's actually working with a student who needed to be tested for English language learning pieces. So it sort of speaks to the point and the need of having the position. So to begin, if you would look at the packet that says at the top, questions from board members, 17-18 NCPS superintendent's budgets. And it should have been under your agenda when you came in this afternoon. The first question, the first couple of questions are about staffing. And there's a question about looking at our enrollment. It talks about, looking year to year, projection is that we'll go down 5 students, but we are looking for some new positions. Do we see any areas for future reduction in staff? So just as a reminder, the positions we're looking at include an FTE at the high school in response to enrollment increases there. We're looking at an English language learner teacher to work in that program. We're looking for a mathematics instructional specialist at Saks and a custodian at Saks due to the new square footage. And then 2 paraprofessionals in our preschool over at West, and those paraprofessionals would be funded by grants, as we've discussed. So, thinking about our staffing and having our discussions, so you know, each year when we put our budget together, we really look very closely at our programming, at our enrollment, and we make sure that our staff is aligned with our enrollment needs and our programmatic needs. Were our enrollment to shift in different places, then certainly we would be responsive to those shifts in our staffing. But right now, as we look at our programs and we look at the enrollment that's coming, we believe these 6 positions are necessary in order to adequately, appropriately staff our district across the board. So then another question just about our staff and the longevity of our staff. And what you'll see is that teachers begin earning longevity in New Canaan after 16 years of experience with us. And you can see the chart there that breaks that out. Most of a large number of our teachers here are between the 16 to 20 years of experience. And as you go down, you see the 35 plus, that we have 13 teachers who are receiving longevity for 35 or more years of experience. Now, we talk about the longevity payments. It's the amount that's next to it is the amount that each teacher receives for that. So for 35 or more years of experience, here in New Canaan Public Schools, you would receive a $900 stipend for longevity for that one. Okay? Of course.
I just want to emphasize the point, because now we're in a public meeting and we keep repeating this number that we're increasing staff by 6. But I just want to emphasize that I think we always knew with the addition at Saks that we would require additional custodial support, and also that the 2 paraprofessionals' salaries will be paid through grants. So
right.
I just think it's important. I don't want to see a headline that, where the budget includes 6 new positions.
Right. Right, and certainly we knew about the custodian, as you said. Also, we could anticipate the need at the high school as we look at what we've done through the years at the high school is really to increase program and to flex the offerings for our students without adding new staff. We've been very careful about we've let class sizes get a little bigger in some areas. We've scheduled staff in some different ways. So we've been expanding that program by adding new AP courses, by increasing sections of desirable classes for students for the last 5 years or so without adding new staff. But as this group of students from the 8th grade, that's the largest group in the district, comes into 9th grade next year, that's really what's driving that request for the 1.0. There was also a question about the specials areas at the high school. Since the 9th grade is going up by about 40 students or so, and we need these teachers in the academic areas, do we also need some more support in our specials areas? And we may. As we look at that and we think about it, we may. So I think that can be part of, I welcome that discussion with the board about the possibility of adding an additional 0.2 into the budget for specials areas for those students. With 40 more students, they have to go somewhere. And sometimes, as one of the questions was written, sometimes it's in those specials areas that we really capture the kids' hearts and get them engaged in school and sort of keep them positively engaged throughout the day. So I think that's a good conversation for the board to have as well.
I was going to say one thing. So the current math specialist is K through 8, correct?
The current math specialist at Saks is 5 through 8.
5 through 8.
Just
and
at the
then
middle school.
Second one
So, right.
for the middle school.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I
And
think is, I know how, she is all over the place, so I think that's a really good insert.
I think one of the ways as we were talking about it, and Greg, feel free to jump in however you like. What we're asking for the one person to do is to teach and understand and know the curriculum and best instructional practices, everything from 5th grade math up through geometry in the 8th grade, which is generally a 10th grade class in most districts, right? So that's the accelerated programs we look at it. So you've got one person who we're expecting her, we're giving her the responsibility of knowing the curriculum, knowing best practices, knowing how to differentiate, being able to support students from in that wide range of classes, everything in between 5th grade and geometry. So I think just that alone speaks to the need. And then when we look at it more, we talk about opportunities for both for students who might need some help and also students who maybe have worked through the program and are looking for some more acceleration. So we want to meet the students' needs across the board in mathematics. So I think that, to me at least, in thinking about the position, helps to situate it a bit and understand the needs. So we would look at probably an upper school and a lower school position, and so that those, not only would they learn the curriculum well, get to know their students, the students well, but also develop those relationships with their teachers so that they can best support them in the classroom and again, provide that professional learning for them.
Penny?
So on the math specialist, how much of that person's time will be spent sort of supporting teachers and improving their teaching practices, and how much in direct tutoring of students? Or is that flexible as needed?
I think it's flexible as needed and depending upon the time of the school year, right? So probably I would anticipate in the beginning of the school year there'd be more support with teachers as they're beginning their program, beginning the year, working through, getting to know their students, doing some diagnostic assessments in order to determine where students may be in relation to the content in order to understand those needs. And then as the year progressed, I'd imagine it would be more balanced between that time. But certainly Greg and Jill, you're welcome too.
I don't know that we've ever really quantified it as part of the job description, so I think the flexibility allows us to be nimble enough to address the needs in a responsive way, as Brian just said. In terms of trying to put numbers to the position, if you think about the size of the school, approximately 5% of the student population requires some type of intervention services. And so in mathematics, that would number close to 70. So to expect one person to oversee the case management of how 70 students are performing, I think is a stretch at best. And therefore the request for the second person.
Cynthia?
Well, and I just wanted to bring to the discussion too that, starting from middle school, we really differentiate the math much more than we do in our elementary stuff. We've got the regular age level versus the advanced and the double advanced stuff. And it's really important that we get kids as they're developing, because we know kids don't all develop in a linear fashion, but sometimes you might jump or down. So we want to have someone there that's available to see that, because that's the best way we know when students are going to miss a line. It can cause really havoc with the student's education. So I think having that support to make sure, because this is when we start really differentiating math, it seems like a prudent way to go.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like my daughter's in 6th grade, and there are, like Brian said, there's almost 3 or 4 different levels just in her class alone. Some people are getting challenging things to kind of get them in a different stage than what they're learning, and some are in a group where they're diving in deeper. So just in that one class in 6th grade, and I don't know how many teams there are in 6th grade, but that's just, that's a lot going on in one class, let alone,
Sure. And when we talk about differentiation, that's exactly what we're talking about,
Yeah.
right? Being able to modify in response to the needs of the individual
Right.
students in the class.
Penny?
Well, I just want to say I was happy to see this position. I mean, I think, we look at our test scores every year, and I think that our test scores for SACs in the math area showed room for improvement. And I'm assuming that this is the step that the staff thinks is, administration thinks is the, good way to help advance the math education, of all the students at SACs. It's the most efficient use of our resources.
I also want to just emphasize that when you're dealing with certification, we need to always remember that our 5th and 6th grade teachers are sitting under an elementary certification. They are not content certified. They're not 712 certified. I mean, some might be 712 certified. It's rare that you find someone that's cross-endorsed, and every so often we have a 712 content person who can teach 6th grade math. But to have that person who's an expert in math that can help develop the content expertise of those 5th and 6th grade teachers is really important. It really helps to differentiate that instruction and allows us to continue to work forward with that workshop model that Jen was describing. And you did a terrific job describing it, Jen, of that differentiation that really does occur in that classroom with that quick mini lesson and then moving out into those strategy groups to really help make sure that you're meeting all the needs of the students. So it's really important to keep moving forward with this position.
I just wanted to step back one, to the new FTE at the high school. So I think you did a good job at the last meeting, but I'd like to revisit the need for the additional FTE. Because, you know, as Jill said, we have 7 through 12 certified educators. Why wouldn't, you know, if the enrollment's going down at Saks, could we redeploy an asset from Saks to the high school? So if you could kind of revisit that with us, I think it would be helpful.
It's the teaming model. Do you want
And
to?
somebody,
Greg, I
yeah, I'm
can
looking at
get
Greg, or I'm
started,
looking at
sir.
you,
The,
or
Gary.
well,
Garrett, whoever.
Yeah, sure, and I'll just, you know, begin by saying over the last number of years, the board has been committed to establishing the team model over at Saks Middle School, which provides for a certain level of support and an ability to deliver the instructional program in a way that's most appropriate for our middle school aged learners. Greg, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about the specifics, but I believe that it's important to maintain the support for that model and for our students, and for the whole program.
Sure, unlike a junior high school, it's not feasible to cherry pick one staff member for a period in the morning and send them to the high school, because it really takes that staff member away from doing the regular schedule of the middle school team. So the middle school team really is 4 homerooms co-joined by expertise in each department: language arts, social studies, math, and science. So there are other districts that run a junior high model, and obviously the middle school isn't advantaged by that. And it may be that it's a resource deployment to the high school that causes that. So I would hate to have to pit one level of development against the other when we're talking about incremental FTEs. I do know that in large systems, there are teachers that will cross schools, and in our system, we make some of those efficiencies at the elementary level. Some of my special area teachers do go to an elementary school and deliver some art or PE or music education. So I do think where we see it as feasible and not disadvantaging either one of those levels, we're able to do that.
Now, a challenge with shared staff between the middle school and the high school is scheduling. So we look at our middle school staff, and already we talk about, it's really 2 schools that run in one place, right? Because there's the upper school and a lower school that are on different time schedules. And our high school runs on an 8-period, but 7 periods meet a day, and one drops every 8 days, and the periods are always rotating and moving. So you really couldn't form that kind of a shared relationship with another building unless it was on the same schedule, and none of the schools aren't. So the middle school is able to share with the elementaries because of the 6-day rotation that in the last couple of years we've worked very hard to put in place and to sort of, standardize, if I can use that word, across. So they're able to share that staff from the PE and art, but with looking at the high school, that's just such a different schedule, you couldn't do that.
Okay.
Good?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the point 2?
I would love, that was my question, I would love to talk about the point 2.
I wasn't sure where we were gonna put that in, so.
Let's talk about the point 2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with the larger, my question basically was with the larger group moving to the high school, the specials really often are the areas that ignite the students. And so you've seen students just take off with a special, and then it transforms into better performance across the board. So I didn't know if we needed an extra point 2 to be awarded at a later date, depending upon what the students sign up for.
So our thought coming into building the budget was that we would do exactly that. Wait to see what the students signed up for, see what our capacity was in that area as far as seats go. Because again, they're not going to sign up for the same thing, but they are all in 9th grade. So unlike a general increase in the high school that might be spread out across the 4 grades, that could be more easily absorbed, being all in 9th grade, there'll be a greater impact, I think, on that. But we were waiting to see, initially we put this together, what the requests were, so that we could make that determination. However, as we look at it, we're talking about 40 some odd students. So it is very likely that we will need an additional point 2. I couldn't tell you where that would be at this point, because again, it's going to be responsive to where they sign up. It's something that we could come back for, and talk to the board about in the future, and talk about, making decisions around transfer, whatever it might be. But it's certainly a good time to have this conversation now, and if the board felt and agreed with it, we could put the 0.2 into the budget at this point, so having a 1.2 increase in the high school, where 1.0 would be in each of the 5 special areas as we've discussed, and the 0.2, or 5 core areas, and then the 0.2 would be for special area to be determined later.
So are there courses, just in general, in ninth graders all have to take, like they have to take a certain amount of PE, which would be considered special or health class or something? So what are those? Is it just health and PE, or is it like some of
Well,
the things that most of them take?
Sure, there are classes, there are credit distribution requirements that they have that include career and technology education and include some other areas too. They do take PE and health, they will have to go in there, but that's also an area where there's some more flexibility around class size, around PE. You know, we have, as you recall, I'm sure, from looking at class sizes, we have allowed those numbers to go above in PE specifically. But it's really, it's looking at, thinking about career and technology education and the STEM and the, you know, knowing the interests of the students coming in, and knowing sort of what that they've been exposed to STEM at the middle school. They've shown interest through Tech Night and other things to being involved in computer science and perhaps engineering, that much more likely that 0.2 would go somewhere like that.
So can you just, because we know with strong certainty the number of students matriculating from 8th to 9th grade, so can you talk about the flip side? So if we don't build in the additional 0.2 FTE, you know, what position could we find ourselves in if we're short staffing
Sure.
with more students at the high school?
I mentioned before that how we found so many efficiencies over the last 5 years or so. Had we not done that, we probably would have been able to look at staffing and move some things around, but we've really sort of maximize those efficiencies that we could. So if we didn't build this in, what we'd wind up doing is looking at our salary accounts after things are sort of put back together and we know kind of where we are a little bit further in the year. We may look to saving somewhere else that we would be transferring to cover this cost. So we'd have to make some other decisions and probably reduce in another area in order to cover this. That there are many other options.
And do we have specials that are way oversubscribed for the students that want to take them? I know we had that situation in music technology for a long time, and you know there were a number of students who really wanted to take it. It was their top choice, and they graduated without being able to get to it. And I know we've addressed that now, but I was just wondering where we were.
Well, and the music technology is a great example of the efficiencies I'm talking about, so it sort of gives you a concrete example. So we have one teacher at the high school who's teaching music technology, and she teaches 5 sections each semester, right? So that's a 1.0 FTE. So she was teaching her 5 classes, so 10 over the course of the year, but we had enough student interest really to fill many more sections than that. So what we look to do, we have our orchestra teacher and our band director, and we asked them to really take a good look at their schedule, and they moved things around and changed things up. And they each picked up some sections of the music technology course so that we can offer it to many more students. So now instead of being limited to 10, we're teaching more like 14 sections a year as we go.
So do we have
So other areas like that?
Like that?
Well, that we certainly have more interest than we have seats, and in many of the specials areas. Sometimes it comes because of facility. For instance, in our culinary arts program, we only have 1 kitchen, so we only have 1 culinary arts classroom we can use for that, and it really maxes out at about 16, 18 students. So we have 8 periods that can run in each, I can't say day, but in each 8-day cycle, there are 8 periods that run. So doing that out, you can only, each year, if you used it every single period of the day, have 16 sections of the family and consumer science. We could fill more than that if we had more space, because we have more interest than that from the kids. So there are some areas like that we are up against a constraint that we have to figure out and work around as best we can.
So are we up against that constraint in the TV studio class? I mean, the particular parent that called me said that had been the program that really touched her son. She was just amazed at how it continued through college, and it was just a fabulous program. She wanted to make sure we had the support for it.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe we're up against the facility constraint there. We are looking at some creative scheduling there with our 3rd-year students and 4th-year students, so that they can develop more independent type programs and more project-based work that they're doing. But I believe we're okay there as far as our numbers go. It's a significant commitment, as as far as the filming and the putting out the weekly TV broadcasts and things. But I believe we're okay there right now. If there were a large influx of students next year as a result of the the enrollment increase with ninth grade, then that is an area that we would need to add an FTE, add the 0.2. If that were the one place that we needed that overflow, because the teacher who's currently teaching it is also involved with the Quran, and he's also involved with design courses that he teaches. So he's has a full schedule. He's not so.
We've also added more electives in the STEM, so we've added gaming, 3D animation, and website design. And this year, they currently ran just for the semester, but we have some flexibility next year that we could run web design 2 semesters. We could run it in the fall and then run it again in the spring if we had enough interest. So it gives us some options. We'll probably add interior design and maybe a couple other course proposals. Once again, we're finding that the students really like those semester-long courses for the electives because it gives them some choice and allows them to try different areas that they have of interest.
So just given this discussion, I'd like to make a motion to amend the superintendent's budget by adding 0.2 FTE at the high school. And I just want to remind everyone that this larger sized grade that's moving into the high school is the same resilient grade that, spent most of their Saks middle school years without an auditorium and in overcrowded conditions. So I do want to make sure that we're prepared for them to matriculate into the high school and that we're not in a situation where we're scrambling to cover.
I would second that motion.
Penny? I guess, is there any more discussion on that part, the adding of the 0.2 FTE in high school? Okay, so I guess we could vote on that amendment, and then we'll wait for more discussion on the rest of the list.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to add a 0.2 FTE at the high school for the specials. First made by Ms. West and seconded by Ms. Raption. All those in favor? And that's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on.
Okay. So I think since you have this with you, I would encourage the answer to the questions printed out. Instead of walking through, I think what I'd like to do now is ask Dr. Keating to share with you an update on our insurance and the performance of this year's insurance and the internal services fund. As you know, salaries are the biggest item in our budget, and they're the largest driver. The second largest driver of our budget are the benefits. And salary and benefits combined account for a little over 81% of our total district budget. So I think we've really thought through, I commend the board, I think you've thought through and discussed and deliberated the different positions. We can certainly revisit any of them. Lizette did arrive, so if there are any questions about the EL position, we can certainly go back there.
And I also think we should mention that the resources committee has been through this budget as well.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. Yep, thank you, Cheryl. Yep. The resources committee has been through it, and I've also been able to present the budget to parents at a joint PTC meeting over at East School a few weeks ago, and then also was able to present to parents at the high school, parents of Saks and the high school, and share a conversation with them. And in both places, there was somebody prepared to go after I was done and speak with them about something else. And in both places, I took an hour and a half and cramped the other person, and they didn't have time. So I'm not going to do that to Dr. Keating this afternoon. So let me step aside, I know. But as I mentioned, the internal services fund and the benefits for our employees is a significant portion of our budget. And so when good news occurs in that area, we want to share it with you. And
Okay, great.
turn over.
You have before your places tonight a document called Internal Services Fund. So if that's what we're going to be referring to right now. The first 2 pages of the document are
It's in our
76 to
handout,
80.
but you gave us a refill for that, so.
Oh, yeah, right. It was blank in your books before, and I have the inserts.
It's got the red, it's page 76, but it's a paperclip version.
And in addition to that, I did give you the reserve policy from the town so that you can have that to refer to as well. The first 2 pages of the document really are a narrative about what we've actually put together in terms of the financials, which can be found on page 78. So I'd like to speak to page 78 if I When Brian presented the budget a few weeks ago, we had informed the board that we had included a 6% increase in our budget, the operating budget, year over year, 17 to 18. And we based that on a very, preliminary conversation that we had with Joe Spurgeon, who was our consultant. And at that time, it was probably in mid-November that we put that number together. So we had literally had claims for 1 month of our plan year. Our plan year starts September 1st through August 31st, unlike most school districts, which is July 1st through June 30th. So we had a very premature period of time. So we had asked Joe at that time to really start to take a look at our history, start to look at trending for us, in the hopes that we could put together a more solid budget for the board to vote on. And so we've been working with Joe the last few weeks to do just that. He's taken a very deep dive into our claims and has put together, I think, a rather good model for us to move forward on. The good news is that we do anticipate our claims experience from 2016, which improved tremendously, to carry on through 17 and 18. When we put the 17 budget together, we were coming in of a very bad claimant period, if you recall, where our claims were very high. And so we went in with a high budget, and the town actually supported that. We had at the last kind of 11th hour, when the town council was putting their numbers together, we were able to reduce that by $454,000. But it actually improved beyond that number as we got through 16. And we ended up with, at the end of 16, with about 1.5 million in the fund, as you can see. So when you take a look at the financials here, you're gonna see the actuals for 2016, the budget for 2017, the newly projected numbers for 17, and the budget request for 18, revised on our analysis, based on our analysis. So at the time that the 17 budget was put together, our consultant at the time, Steve Rinaldi, had anticipated that our claims for this current year would be $13.4 million. The revised numbers on that right now are 12.2. So that's a significant decrease or improvement, I would say, where we expected to be last year at this time. So that was the new basis that we started to work off of moving forward to developing our 18 budget. And as a result of that improvement in claims, we're actually able to reduce our budget for 18 below what we requested for 17. If that makes sense to you. So where we came in initially at a 6% increase, we're actually able to reduce that completely and actually come below that number. Now, another part of the good news that we have to share with you is that our projected fund balance going into the end of this fiscal year is projected to be right now $2.2 million. So if you come down on the financials here, the top half of the financial statement is the statement of revenue and expenditures. So you have all of your revenues, then you have your expenditures and where you project to be out. Since we already have our budget established for this year, we're not going to decrease what we're putting in the fund. We're going to put in exactly what we're appropriated to put in. And what happens with that is it falls out into fund balance at the end of the year. So we have that fund balance available to offset some of our increase for next year. Just as the boards have been doing that kind of off, the Board of Ed's record over the last few years digging into the fund, we're going to do that to the tune of $157,000 for next year. So our recommendation right now to the board is that we decrease our contribution to the Internal Services Fund, and it comes to $892,000 by using some of the fund balance. And then in addition to that, we would like to leave $500,000 in the fund above and beyond the 60% of the quarter, the reserve requirement, for budget stability in future years. So last year when we went to the boards, we talked a lot about the need for the fund was not only to really reserve for your risk exposure in a given year, but really to offset and mitigate some long-term budget volatility. And so that's why when we looked at the fund balance carrying forward, we felt it was appropriate to request funds at $500,000 to offset future budget volatility.
So that will be above the 60/40.
Yes.
Okay.
So would that be just something that's just a question for this coming 2018, would that be something we would request each year going forward? We're just doing that this one time to get that stability? in
Well,
the
I
budget
think,
for the
yeah,
year?
I think it really depends year to year where we want to go with it, but last year when we went into the budget conversation with the town council, for example, we did talk about the fact that our budget request last year was really just to meet the 60%. We didn't ask for additional funds because the gap was so significant, the budget amount was a lot. But going forward, you know, one of the purposes of the fund is really to provide that budget stability. So I would say pegging it and really understanding where you think your fund balance year over year is gonna come out, and then, you know, having the conversation like we're having right now.
So that, and you think that, you know, so let's say we, in 19, we have this, another great year. You wouldn't need to, you would sort of peg 500 as sort of the additional buffer. You wouldn't want to build that up. It would be just, that would be the $500,000 kind of buffer that would just stay there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's something that we would talk to Joe about, and it would
Okay.
depend on how the claims are trending,
Okay.
and, you know, a variety of different other variables. But I think having an amount of money in the fund that is designated to offset future budget volatility, just like what we're using this year to reduce our budget,
Right.
there's gonna come years like you had in 13 or 14 when you need
Right.
additional funding,
Right.
because claims go beyond your 8 or 9% that you put in the budget.
And I know the town is just finishing up its audit, but, you know, the other side of our piece is their piece on the financial statements. I mean, have you and the town sat down to kind of review this policy and make sure that whatever in the audit financial statements we're comfortable with, you know, what's reserved for the town, for the Board of Ed?
It is, it actually exceeds the policy by about 120,000.
Okay.
At the end of 16.
Okay.
So you can see it, if you look at the financials here, and you look, you know, just above the balance sheet where it says balance sheet, this is kind of the reserve analysis that we did. And you can see we ended 2016 with 127,621 above the policy.
Yeah.
Whereas last year, you can see we were just going into the budget with a wash. You know, literally,
Right.
anticipating a wash. And then you move over to the third column where it says projected 2017. And we're projecting a fund balance of 2,187,261.
Yeah.
The requirement for the corridor is 1,459,817.
Yeah.
So that's where you can see the additional money coming in.
Yeah,
And-
it's more that we can see this is our side of the piece, this is our side, and we can watch this and we can see this. I just wanna make sure that we have a process in place to make sure that the full 100 we're very comfortable with everything that's in place.
I do review the financials
Okay.
when they're in draft form to make sure that our numbers agree with what's being published.
Okay. Great.
And so then you can see moving over to the very last column, the 500,000, that's gonna be above the policy.
Okay.
And I think we're in a strong position right now to, at least for this current fiscal year, there's no claims out there that we're not aware of that are in the pipeline. So we feel like we've taken an appropriate position in terms of the financials.
And I'm just remember stressing this to the public too, it's just that, you know, this is not, we're not adding and pushing this budget, it's really to address volatility. Because I know it always goes back, well, there's plenty of reserve in the town funds if we run short, it's not about that. This is really about maintaining the volatility in this type of arena of insurance because it can go up and down so much. And that's the reason why it's there.
Yeah, it's more of a long-term budget stability approach.
Right.
The good news with all of this is that we're able to drop the budget request down to, it was 2.78 with this modification. So we thought that might make everybody a little happy.
The full budget.
The full budget.
That does make us happy.
Well, and certainly for the last couple of years, we've been talking about having to replenish this account and how the reserves had been purposefully drawn down through the years to the tune of 800,000 plus each of the years in order to manage and control the budgetary increase.
Right.
So we have, this is the good news and the sort of the positive outcome from that work with the town on last year's budget and putting this forward, that our claims have turned around, they've improved, so now the projections are less, so now that we're in a stronger position, we can do this, you know, versus having to always try to backfill money that had been used, you know, without, well, in advance instead of covering. So I think one of the things for discussion a little bit is the $500,000. You know, so the corridor, the 60% of the corridor and the Board of Ed's responsibilities are covered. And then the $500,000 is there as, again, as we build up, as the fund sits, not to get large, but to have enough to help in cases of volatility. If the claims next year we were to have a turn the opposite way, you know, then the budget increase would be significantly larger. So we have $500,000 in there now, knowing that it's always wise, I think, for a Board of Education to have a conservative stance, or at least certainly a well thought through stance around funding with this. So if there's any questions or discussion there, certainly welcome it.
Well, I think, having lived through sort of the big swings and pretty heated conversations around funding that reserve, I agree, because we start off wanting that corridor completely funded, and I think it helps the taxpayer and the town to not have those, one-year swings where we have to go in and request an additional, $1 to $2 million just for health insurance. So I would be in favor of, keeping a modest amount in there. And would we work with Joe to find out what he thinks is, a reasonable conservative amount? We don't want to have a lot of money sitting in this account beyond the corridor, but whatever's prudent. And I'm not an expert on what would be a prudent amount.
We did talk to Joe, and I've worked with him, as you know, over the years. And generally speaking, what he does recommend is a 5 to 7%.
Okay.
So I think that this is below that.
Okay.
And
What is this percent?
So,
Do you look at it as a percent of the
claims.
of claims?
Yeah.
So what does this work out to 8%?
So our anticipated claims are about 12.7.
Yeah.
So 5 on that is in 4.
Yeah.
But I,
Go ahead, Sharon.
so just to
Thank you.
clarify,
Appreciate it.
are you looking to revise our policy, or are you looking just for the discretion of us opining that, we're gonna add in this buffer and that's okay? I mean, are we looking?
Yes, that's all, not looking to change the policy, it's really a philosophy, right? And we think that this is the wise and prudent approach, that, certainly to look at this and to have some funding in there to adjust or account for volatility that can come. Another approach could be to take all of the 500 and put it against this year's request, and further lower the number, but then you do leave yourself open to volatility next year. If claims went the opposite direction, then that would be and we can see how much the numbers swing just in this one account. So while doing that might bring us to a number in the low 2s, next year we might be talking about a 4 something number just to open the doors. So that's your pros and cons with that.
So the policy itself does not say that you can't do this, that's why I did give you a copy of that. Because after I read it really closely, I thought to myself, nothing precludes the board from making this suggestion to the town. It basically says that we'll talk about it at budget time, anything in excess of the corridor.
And this sits on the town's books anyway, all this,
Yes.
this is the health, this is not money that comes, technically, it's not really sitting on the Board of Education, even the normal operating account.
What's an
This is
internal
the-
services fund?
Right, that's operated, you manage it with our health insurance provider, but all the money flows through an account that the town holds.
Right, it's a perpetual account. You're allowed to carry forward your balances unlike the general fund, where you have to give it back at the year end. But all of our financials actually reside on the town's books, so they can see all of our transactions. It's very transparent in terms of the activity within the fund. So I'm not gonna, that's not a concern. It's just coming to agreement on the number.
Right.
And the philosophy actually behind what we're trying to accomplish here, which is more budget stability over the long term.
Right.
And just so that you know, when I did kind of look at these numbers, I went back to take a look at claims over time, and there are peaks and valleys. But that 11 to 12 million number, if you had that flat all the time, you wouldn't need it. But the truth is, it goes up and then it comes back down, and it is very cyclical at times.
So I just had a couple points on it. I mean, one, we're still at the 300,000 individual stop loss.
Yes.
I believe, actually, the town is at lower level for that. So that, as I understand, we've done the analysis. It provides a little bit more risk to the budget, but it overall saves town money, or we wouldn't be at that. We'd be looking to lower that level. Is that correct? You know,
Yes, that's
the
correct.
premiums that we're saving money in this year's budget by not purchasing a $100,000 ISL or $200,000 ISL.
Right, the premiums are much less expensive.
Premium is much less
as the number goes
expensive.
up.
And over time, we've done the analysis, I think the board has seen it, but that is to the town's financial benefit, but it does allow for this more, volatility. So I would be in favor of the cushion for that. And then I guess the other thing is, I look at it, when you have the bad claim year, you don't have some sort of cushion, you have a double whammy, because not only do you have to make up the reserve to get back up to the 60% in the next year's budget, but then you also start at a higher level, for that claim year with the anticipated claims. So just having some sort of, for budget stability, it makes sense. And then what I really like about how you presented this is you have the 500,000 right out there. So I would keep it there for now, and then if the town, we'll talk to the Board of Finance and the town council about it, and, make certain that they're comfortable with it also.
Yeah. Hazel?
I just want to ask, in the past, it has been that we have, if there is a problem with stability of whatever happens in insurance, and we don't have enough money to cover it. My understanding is that the board has to cover as well as the superintendent. Is that, we have some sort of a responsibility to do it?
Yes.
That's what I
Yeah, he has to take a separate
Yes.
responsibility.
Yes.
Very
If-
good. That's why I think
Complicated.
this would be a very
Mhm.
positive thing for us and to encourage in the future other people to want to run for the board and for future superintendents to ever want to be here, while keeping the ones that we like to stay here.
Yeah, we don't want,
Thank you.
we don't want that, let's say, to mow lawns, do we?
That's
No.
exactly for
Yeah.
ourselves also. So I think that's something that should be understood by people as they look at this figure and say, all right, just all the things that we've been saying, why, the reasons why. But there's also a personal thing that's in there that's saying, just to make sure that we do, if something comes above what we're ever expecting, and hoping it's not gonna happen. But if it does, we've got something there to cover, because I think that's part of what also we feel the obligation to our staff and to making sure that that does happen. 2 points.
That's it. Sherry?
So I just want to add on to what Penny was saying, and I do support this. I guess I would say that if we're not going to officially revise the policy per se, I do think we should have some written understanding of what this is and how it was established. I think the fact that our insurance consultant has advised us that, most organizations have a 5 to 7% volatility buffer, and ours is actually a little bit less than that 4%. I think that should be documented. And I do think to say difference to reserve policy, I think if we can come up with a name for it, like volatility buffer that's more descriptive, I think would be helpful in the communication of this.
Sherry just gonna echo what I was gonna say anyway. It was just that the fact that I think as people looking over the budget, as part of the board, we should mention things so that the taxpayers are not getting these things where they can have this volatility. And so even though it seems like, why are you doing this, there's a reason why, and it's in the best interest of the taxpayers to have something set aside so that we don't have that, because I think we've done a great job of figuring out where our expenses are throughout the year through these new budgeting teams. But this is something we can't do anything further, in terms of actually determining what it's gonna be like this year versus 2 years or 3 years down the road. And so, and as the chair was saying, we need to have this as a separate item.
It kind of speaks to sort of what the town, I think, is trying to look at in general. I mean, you know, they look at establishing a fund to be, you know, proactive in being able to purchase open space by having money set aside for, you know, that purpose as they have extra in the budget over a number of years, so that it's not always a crisis situation. And I think there's value in sort of planfully creating these funds so that, you know, we don't shock the taxpayer when things don't go the way we want them. And also, you know, kind of the rainy day fund, when you have the money to save up, you do, and then you use it when we have that claims year, so.
And I think the fact that we're looking at this year to year, so it's not an automatic 500 each year, so it's not gonna be accumulating, that we can reevaluate, make sure things are important thing to note, because that's, I think, what people fear, is that we're not getting this big giant fund, what to do with it, so, and that's not our intent.
But that's why we put the financials together for the board, so that everybody could actually see what the projections were based
Anyone else?
Actually, my question is, when you're talking about the 5 to 7%, our consultant is recommending, are we taking into account the 40% reserve fund that the town is also setting aside in a special account? So when he says we're under the 5 to 7%, we're counting our 60% and their 40%?
Yeah, that's beyond the corridor, the full corridor.
This
Okay.
is,
He's saying 5 to 7%,
Beyond the
keep it
corridor.
beyond the corridor.
Yes.
Right, because it's long-term
volatile.
budget. Yeah, stability.
Okay.
right, because as Joey mentioned, the claims tend to run cyclically, where you might
Right.
have a run of poor claims, then things can improve, and having some there helps you to be gradual and to manage any spikes in the budget.
Like for those of us who forgot 2 years ago, what happened? You know, I think we just have to go back 2 years and see what we were going through 2 years ago to maybe have an appreciation for
Okay,
this.
no, I just didn't understand what the
Yeah.
5 to 10% was.
Right, so it's not related to the corridor.
Yeah.
That you fully fund the corridor, and this is in
And then
addition.
5 to 7%
In order,
in addition.
because of the way that claims history informs your projected claims.
Okay.
That if that claims history turns around, then this helps you to not have to come before the town and others with a large number, just as a move forward. Great.
So we wanted to take you back to the summary, the executive summary, just to review a few things that are in this budget that are somewhat different than prior years. So we're going to go into pages 19 through 21. I'm going to jump around just a little, because certain things have to kind of fall into place. The first thing we wanted to point out to you is that we grossed up the stipends for the athletics program, which can be found in the tab starting on page 44. So the athletic program has a new exhibit in it this year that breaks out all of the budget by sport. So you can actually see it's on page 48, and it includes all of the stipends, even those that are funded through donations from boosters. So that's a change, and so you're going to see kind of a significant incremental difference between the budget for 17 and the reforecast. But those stipends are offset by a revenue that you'd be able to see. So if you turn to page 48, you'll see a rather comprehensive worksheet on that page. But at the bottom, you're going to see outside support of $157,743 rather. That is the donations from two booster sources, the All Sports Booster and the Hockey Booster. Okay. So the expenditures have been grossed up, and what we've also done, Jay and Tracy worked together on the sheet, is putting together a per athlete cost. So you'll be able to see that. I know it's a lot to go over, we just wanted to bring it to your attention, so you have an opportunity to review it as we move forward with the board. So that's a new piece there. We also have, in terms of revenues, gate receipts in here, and we have parking fees. So with the gate receipts, one thing that you should note there is that we hosted the Turkey Bowl this year. That's a big revenue source for us. There's also a lot of expenses associated with that. Next year, we don't host the Turkey Bowl, so you're gonna see a reduction in revenues and a reduction in some of those expenses. You're gonna see that every other year as we move forward.
I haven't looked at the pages, but about how much are we talking about netting this year? Was it just?
$27,000. So that was good. We put in together all new procedures with regards to our gate receipts amongst other things in student activities. And so we have a really good handle on what those numbers are this year. So just walking through this a little bit more on pages 19 through 21. On page 20, this year we included in here maintenance projects, special maintenance projects. That is different than prior years. So Bob had a very long list. He spent a lot of time this year going through everything and trying to put together a very comprehensive capital list. And what we found is that we had about 23 projects that were less than $10,000 each. So rather than putting those into the capital request, we've included those in the operating budget. And so those are an incremental change to the budget of $115,000. And the list is extensive. Do you have a page 20 there? Yeah, so you can see that. So that's just something that you might want to get yourself familiar with. When we were at the Selectmen the other day, I think that Brian had a prior conversation with the first Selectman with regards to our transportation contract. A few months ago, we renegotiated the contract with DACO, and we feel that we had a very good outcome to that negotiation. We have a 2.9% increase, and over the next 3 years, we're going to cycle in propane buses. So a third, and a third in propane buses, which will save us money. One of the things that we didn't anticipate in the budget is the discount, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting. On Tuesday, the first selectman gave us basically the blessing to budget for that discount. So we'll be able to reduce the budget to $31,000, so we are grateful for that.
In prepaying the contract, yes.
One of the things to note also in each of the cost center, the listing of equipment's there. So we don't have it outlined in the executive summary, but you can find the details within each cost center. Another thing we wanted to point out to you is that we anticipate moving the OTPT speech in-house. So you're going to see a decrease in contracted services with the anticipation of additional costs and salaries for those services.
If I looked at it correctly, though, the net between the two is a win for us.
It is.
I would say that's a win.
Yeah,
$40,000.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
So that's STAR's goal. I did also want to point out to you that each year we do budget for grid progression. It's $253,000. Jane in HR department has a fairly good handle on that. We were very close with the projection this year. So that's an incremental increase to the budget. We have 3 contracts.
Where's the two?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 19. Sure.
So, on page 19, you'll see grid progression is $253,318, and then salary adjustments, $223,260. And on the 9th, when we talked just very briefly about the turnover costs and turnover savings. And you'll see in the budget that we've anticipated $100,000 turnover savings, although right now, if we were to start the new year, we would not have that savings in our budget because we don't have those retirements. However, the salary account isn't the only account that's impacted when we have turnover. And I think here you see the salary adjustments piece, which in part is when people are moving lanes. You know, if they're come into us with a bachelor's degree, then if they earn 30 credits or a master's and beyond. And there's also the money around tuition reimbursements and others. And I know Gary and Joanne and staff are taking a look at that and putting together more information about it. But I do think it's important for us to think about and talk about a little bit. So I just want to take a minute to share that when we have turnover, while there might be savings in salary, there are other onboarding costs throughout the program that really extend over a number of years for staff to come in. Bottom line, when we hire teachers, we're not necessarily hiring people that are at the top of the scale, fully educated and ready to go. You know, we believe in continuous learning and improvement. That's our work, and it takes some time and effort and resources to get people there. Kara, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, we're trying to look at each of those categories where it really adds to our onboarding costs, not only tuition reimbursement, which can be, 15 credit hours each year for like the first 4 years of a teacher's work here. Just that is, somewhere in the $14,000 range for one teacher. So you got to put that as part of the cost for onboarding, and any other work that they need for training. It's additional expenses. So we're just trying to get our arms around what those onboarding costs truly are, rather than just a strict calculation of, a teacher at the top of the scale retires and we hire in year one. It's not as simple as that. So we want to be able to bring that to the fore.
And the position control and the detailed budgeting that we're doing now helps us to identify what some of those costs are. So we'll continue this conversation. But why don't you just share that, since we're looking at grid progression and salary adjustments.
So these 3 pages basically give you an explanation of why the budget changed. If there's anything on here that you have questions, feel free to ask. We just wanted to point out those few different things to you.
And John, when I'm getting from this too, that we're having a significant decrease in our custodial services because of the reduction of overtime, switching
Right.
over to this new thing, which, even though we're asking for another custodian, we really significantly reduced our budget for it.
We have for the overtime, the primary reason for that is this current fiscal year, we've had a tremendous amount of workers' comp time that we've had to make up through overtime. So our assumption in this budget is that would be lessened, so our overtime requirements will not be as high. That's kind of the philosophy behind that. The extra staffing certainly will help with that.
So Joanne, you're saying what you want to do is net out the line above that.
Right.
Anticipated returns for current year workers' comp custodian, 63,000, because they'd be coming back, so we'd be paying their salaries. And then as a result, we're reducing the overtime expectations by 100. So the savings you want to probably net out between about the 37,000.
We receive money from our insurance company when they're out to pay, to supplement their payments, so that's what that's about. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm sure this will grow over time.
Thanks, Joanne.
So, this is a small point in the budget, but I was wondering, since we had talked about athletics in that overview, where we were on the funding for club sports. That was a
Sure.
big item of discussion, I was wondering.
Was it?
So, I was just wondering.
Yes, so after careful consideration and much discussion, Jay's budget does include an addition of $30,000 in the new budget for club sports. So the budget for 17-18 does have that included.
So do you want
If
to
you
be on
turn to
the
page 47.
Yeah, 47.
And it's seven that you all went over at the meeting, I wasn't at, I apologize.
No, it's fine. Yep, 30,000 in club sports, the one line. Currently, we have one program that has requested funding, and they are receiving some assistance in some of their costs.
Right.
Yay, thank you.
All right, so that's working, so I just wanted, that's working well, and no adjustments are needed to that
Right.
line item.
I think we feel talking with Jay and Bill Egan both, have taken a look at that and feel comfortable putting that number forward. Feel confident that's the right number. And, I'm sorry, while we're on athletics, just because Jay's not here, the budget does also include the additional trainer support that we've discussed. And also does, and there may have been a little bit of confusion, it includes the amount of money required for additional helmets and equipment for the anticipated increase in our freshman football program next year, given the number of students there. But if you look at the equipment line, you'll actually see a slight decrease. Let's see, equipment goes down $5,000, and that's because this year there was a purchase of track equipment in there that Jay put in last year. And so that, we bought it, so that comes out. So we have the increase in there for the football, but that other, we've spent that money, we don't need it again next year, so that comes out. So the net is actually down, but we do still have the football equipment in there, so I hope that if that was confusing to anyone. And I think just talking about it is confusing you, so I'll stop.
Jen?
So I also want to say, just on the athletic side, like the trainer, I'm so excited about that because, you know, just at soccer games in the fall, like my son gets hurt on one field and then someone at football practice, she is like, you know, the fields are so far apart, so it's really smart. We have so many athletes and they really need it.
Well,
I'm
and
excited about that.
surprisingly, I was surprised. I started receiving tweets from people in Texas and all over the country commending the board for looking at this and for expanding this coverage.
It's really important.
Because they really feel there's a strong movement nationally to increase trainer support and involvement in high school sports because student safety is so important and we've learned so much more about it. So I became a celebrity from my 15, about 15 seconds of
Yeah.
it. But that's all I need.
So I have another really quick thing. So I know that I've spoken to Jay about soccer and
Yep.
like the scoreboard being broken and all that. Like, is that in here at all?
You know, the scoreboards, Bob, do they fall in your purview or do
Yeah,
they fall in
Bob.
Jay's
No,
purview?
No, scoreboards are not.
No, yeah, I was done by
I was
our
just
sports
wondering.
first
Yeah.
club.
Okay, what?
The football, the Dunning football scoreboard was
wondering,
done
okay.
outside of the budgeting process,
Okay.
and I'm assuming that the soccer one
Got
is
it.
also gonna be done that way
Okay.
as well. But I will double check and make sure, but I'm pretty sure that's how that was handled.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it.
Penny?
So I had another question, which is, I was wondering if the athletic department had looked at all at the football programs that have gone to non-tackle practices. I know St. Luke's went to that this past year. I don't know if it was successful or not successful. I bring it up now in the budget season because I know if we do move to that as a district, that there's some investment in resources and equipment that you have to move to that program. So I was just wondering, and I didn't email this ahead of time, so it's sort of out of the blue.
And I told Jay he didn't have to come today.
So we could answer, you know, you could answer, my guess
Well,
is that they're
I'm-
not moving to that, but I just wanted, you know, concussion, I don't know what the grades of concussions for our students are, but I just wanted to raise it as a safety concern since it's,
Let
had
me,
discussion.
I'll give you a quick answer and then we'll come back with more information with Jay. But I do know that student safety and all of the latest research is really on the forefront of Jay's mind, of the coach's mind, and the work that they're doing. We've had speakers come in and speak with our students and with our parents and with folks and others about a variety of different topics. But I think the request around the trainer is indicative of that
Absolutely,
good work.
right.
Specifically looking at no tackle practices, we've won 4 state championships in a row. We're doing very well as a program. I think that I know that our coaches are always looking at what's best for the kids, and then we do put what's best for kids first. We'll have 180 students participating next year is our guess in our football program. So I'll ask Jay to come and give us more information about it more specifically, but I'm confident that he's up to date.
Yeah, I don't know if
on
it's
that.
for New Canaan or not, I just thought it was interesting and was raising it.
So,
Thank you.
along those lines, when you're talking, I mean, it'd be great to see, you know, if we have injuries, are they occurring more, just this overall study, just, are they occurring at practices or if they're occurring really at the games or stuff?
Yeah, the Jay does keep those data, so we'd like to take a look. Okay. Well, I would like, if we do have some program managers here as well, like Scott and Matt, to discuss technology. If there are any questions around, or if you'd like any more clarity around the use of the tech lease this year and those expectations around that. And Lizette is here around the ELL. In that position, you have any questions for her?
Does anybody on the board have any follow-up questions for Lizette or Scott or Matt on tech or the ELL position? I think it was well articulated in our initial budget presentation, so I think we're, unless, I don't want to speak for the entire board, but unless somebody has any additional questions, we could probably move on from those, because I think we're comfortable with that part of the budget.
Okay, so then I'd just like to ask the board, if you'd like, we could put forward a motion to vote or the board could, on the operating budget, and then Bob speak for a couple of minutes on capital, if we have any questions.
Yeah,
around
that would be great.
Okay,
Do you
so
have a number?
we do.
Okay. I get that number?
So the number, the total is 88,618,405
Okay.
for a 2.76.
Okay.
And that includes the .2 that was voted upon,
Yep.
positions and things we've just talked about, and the reduction in the internal services account
Okay.
And the transportation discount.
and the transportation.
And in all this, we vote.
Did it actually what?
Just
Yeah,
leave it.
yeah,
All right, so, all right, so, we're gonna make I'd like to move to approve for a second read the 2017-18 superintendent's proposed budget as first moved and seconded by Mr. Hayes and Ms. West respectively on January 9th, 2017, in the amount of $88,618,405, or a 2.76 increase over the 2016-17 budget.
I'm sorry, that includes the additional .2?
Yes, that includes the additional .2.
Can I just clarify?
Yes.
The motion?
Yes.
It just, you said move to approve, it, but we're actually moving to approve the budget.
Yes, it's a second read and we're approving the budget, yes.
Okay.
So, yes.
So it's actually on the table still,
Yeah,
because it's
from
been,
the
so
last
really you're
meeting.
looking for a
Right,
vote.
right, and
But
then
actually, you may
motion.
want to amend,
The
you're amending the
original
motion that's
motion.
on the
Okay.
table
Right.
Yeah,
to include the amount,
okay.
okay? So you're amending, and move to amend
Yep.
the,
Amend the.
move to amend the motion,
Okay,
uh,
all right, so,
for, which was approved by, which was
because we
first
already
seconded
moved
and
to,
approved.
yeah, so we moved to add the .2.
Mhm.
So that's in. So
Mhm.
could I get a motion to approve the amended first read operating budget?
You would like
Why do we
to
even
move?
have the word second read in our
Yeah.
motion?
Right. So here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Okay. Now I got it. You're going to, okay, move to amend the motion. Okay. And you're going to put forward an
All right.
amended motion
Yeah.
that is for the Board of Education to
Yeah.
adopt
Yep,
budget
yep.
in the amount of,
80, yeah, yeah.
for 17-18.
So first we have to move to amend and then we move to
And
approve.
then you can approve the
Yeah.
amended.
Okay, so we've already added the .2, but, so could I get a motion to amend the 2017-18 operating budget for the Board of Education to include the .2?
We already
Sorry,
voted
Just,
on that.
just do the amount.
Okay, so 88,000,000,
equal to total.
equals 88,618,405, or an increase of 2.76 over prior year. Sherry, second, Sangeeta. All those in favor? Okay. Now,
Now
Could
you're
we
going to
hit-
vote.
could I get a, so we just
It's
vote,
already
because we've moved and
You're just
seconded.
going to vote.
So could we vote on the 2017-18 superintendent's proposed budget in the amount of $88,618,405, or an increase of 2.76%. All those in favor? Any it's unanimous. Okay,
Great.
sorry for that, that's, okay,
So now I just thought we'd take 5 minutes
okay,
or so, just to have a conversation about capital.
okay.
Bob has been working with Tracy and others to revise the list a little bit and to recategorize a little bit based on some discussions that we've had with the Board of Selectmen and others.
Yes.
Bob, do you want to just take us to those pages? Do you know the numbers?
Page 81 in the budget book.
You look.
And you see 2 pages that I've given to everybody. I'm looking at it, how we broke out certain things. The Board of Selectmen asked us to bunch together some of our capital projects. So what we did was, we took a couple of categories. We took the HVAC that was listed on page 81 for all of the buildings and put it into one category. We took the carpeting and flooring for all of the buildings, put that into another category. And the third category is playground, where we have some playground restoration and playground equipment, was at Saks. The total of these 2 pages is $4,015,131, which was in the book prior. So these are items that the Board of Selectmen is gonna have to review. It's something that we've presented already. And again, we just tried to clarify it for them so we could get to a number that makes sense for all the things that were here. We talked about, you'll see this first page, District East, Southwest, we listed all the buildings and all the items on those buildings that we feel, and it's not a prioritized list, this is just a list of projects. We feel that we can't lump into a specific category. They tend to stand alone in each building. The second page are the ones that we bundled as per the Board of Selectmen. If you'd like me to run through them, I mean, I can.
I think why don't we give
we
us
have
just a
all-
moment to take a look and see
Yeah.
if there are any questions.
And the reason why you have these documents before you today is because we were asked by the Board of Selectmen to categorize our requests in a way that they may be able to issue some debt service for.
And just, again, in terms of priority in these are all, again, like last year, these are all first priority that have to get done
Yes.
on the list, right? So there's no second category on these are all.
No, and as you move down, if you look through the 5-year plan, the numbers are growing, and the big ticket items are out there. So when we talk about priorities, we're looking at things that we believe that we should get done now. Most of these are for safety. There are things like hot water, domestic hot water heaters that we need for health and safety, masonry repairs, things of that nature.
There are a couple of large drivers in there, specifically the propane tanks, for instance. We've been talking a bit about that. We're looking at the option of dual fuel burners that we have in all of our buildings, and having propane and oil be able to heat those. That helps us to be able to take advantage of changes in the market, in the energy market, to manage our costs. And that there's about $800,000, a little bit more than that, in there for those tanks at the 5 buildings. It also would help us down the line because we'll be replacing our underground storage tanks soon. Those could be smaller tanks, more efficient that way. So there are other ways that that's a large driver at $800,000+. We're also looking at an energy management program for another $300,000. That's something that would pay back over time, and would result in savings for the town, for the district. So, just those 2 taken alone are well over $1 million. So while we know 4 is a large number, there's many things in here that are looking at savings long-term and just looking at prudent investments. Other things are certainly regular maintenance, like the HVAC work that we talked about. That's making sure that our systems are working appropriately and taking care of the buildings in the ways that we need them. The large numbers, if you look in the future, in the 5-year capital plan, the largest have to do with roofs. And so this year, we're doing some work to have some engineers take a look at the roofing at our elementary schools. So we can, right now we have placeholder numbers there, and as the next year unfolds, we'll be able to get to more specific numbers that are closer to what the actual costs are going to be. So we begin with placeholders there.
If I might, one of the key things, when Brian spoke about the propane tanks, we want to purchase those tanks and own them. So in the market, we can go out and find the best deal, rather than having someone else own the tanks and dictate to us what the price is for the propane that we want to purchase.
Right, you pay for it one way or the other, whether you pay
Right.
for it through the company and the price and finance it through them over time, or pay for it right away and put them in the ground and be able to negotiate that, so.
And there are 2 items in there on the HVAC category that are asterisks. One is the boiler expansion tanks, and the other is to improve the ventilation in the Saks kitchen. Both of those items, we are in discussion with the Saks Building Committee to see if they belong in that budget rather than in our capital budget.
Right, Penny?
And Penny's not smiling.
I knew about the 20,000, I didn't know about the 60,000. So we'll discuss it.
That's part of the redesign of the kitchen.
But that's why we have them here, Penny, because they're here as placeholders.
We'll
for our
discuss
discussion.
it.
That's why they're asking. Penny wants to discuss it.
And along with our facilities capital, just very quickly, we do have 3 more replacement vehicles for our special education transportation system, which is on schedule and in line with the proposal put forward 2 years ago. We're keeping that going. And of course, we do have our technology capital lease, which is about $150,000 this year, which gives us about $600,000 of purchasing power.
The other document that was handed out is the recap of where we currently stand with capital projects. We started out with $1.7 million, and we've got it down to about $732,000. Some of the big things in there that we haven't accomplished yet are masonry issues that we cannot address when the students are around, and also painting. And we discussed that a little bit at the Board of Selectmen's meeting the other day, that it's very hard to get into an elementary classroom when the teacher has all of her things hung on the wall. You can't tell her to take them down so we can paint over the holiday and hang them back up. So we're planning on trying to push those out into the summer vacation. Last year's summer vacation, as you all know, was kind of a bear. District office moving, SACs under construction, all kinds of things are happening. So we look at moving down the road here. We'll do some painting over this coming break in February. We'll also do some additional painting in April, and hopefully we can bring that number down. But the big issue, big ticket items, the masonry stuff, we really need to wait. And some of it has to do with hazardous materials, which we cannot accomplish from the students in the building.
And the Board of Selectmen asked for that update on this year's capital as well.
So it's not in the budget, it's just a document.
Penny?
So with respect to painting them, is this just a 1 year where we don't have a painting line in our operating budget or our capital budget, and we expect to include it again
You think it'll be
next year?
cyclical down the road? It might not be next year. Probably push it out a couple of years in the budget. Maybe every 3 years you look at trying to do a portion of the painting. We've got a lot of painting money here, and we've accomplished a lot already. So as we move down the road in our 5-year plan, probably 2 years down the road, we'll put some money in there for painting.
All right, so I just want, what money have we included in the capital or the operating budget to cover the plan that the SACS Building Committee is going to come up with for maintaining the building with respect to the approval from the EPA? Remember, we're going to have that, do we got an estimate about what that's going to cost? Is that in the, that's going back to the operating
That
budget?
would be back in operating, yeah.
So I know some, that's been an item there?
Yeah.
That's in-
We have money in professional services. It starts with that, doing a
Yes.
review. I think there's 60,000.
Yes. there is.
Well, I guess before I'm comfortable with where we are this year, we certainly have a lot of painting money that we can spend this summer, but I would like to have a discussion before we make it every 3 years. I mean, I think we need to have some funds there for painting and for maintaining things. particularly
Yeah, one of
given
the, as you know, just 2 years ago was the start of sort of getting the funding for painting. And we came up to the challenge. It's the painting you can do when school's not in session. And really in the summer is the only time you can get into the classroom. So I think part of it is, Bob was very good about using money last year and even earlier to
Right.
hit those big common areas, so the gym, the CAF, hallways, different spots. But now that we're in the classroom spot, we can only budget for what we can use over the summer. Because once school starts in the elementary schools and the middle schools, there's things on the walls in the classrooms, and it's very difficult to get in. So I think that is a little bit of the moderation of the request around the painting.
Right, no, and I completely get that. I just thought that you certainly managed this all extremely well and better than I understand. But in terms of going forward, rather than have it be an every 3 years item, maybe every year, knowing just how much painting you can get done every summer, and then putting
Keep that
that
constant
in.
note. Good, we'll take a look.
Yeah, we can consider it, yeah, sure.
Are there any other questions on capital? All right, well, if not, then I just want to make sure I have the correct total here.
So I have one other question. All right,
Okay.
Sorry, this is just okay, so I'm just trying to remember, for putting the bus building on emergency power,
Yes.
as I recall that project, for the bus operations building, we included the infrastructure
Yes.
and the conduit
Yes.
at expense to the town to be able to have that in there, and that this is just, so this is an expense that was always contemplated we just hadn't gotten around to adding them to the emergency power, but the town has already paid for the connection between two buildings. Is that correct?
That's correct. The connection is there, we just need to get it to the appropriate panel within the building,
All right. So
within
that,
our building.
I just
not in
wanted,
the bus building.
that was the, at the time we did the project, that was, we had to stay within our budget, and so we included the infrastructure, so that, I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, so, I guess all we need to do now is, vote on the, capital budget, for the superintendent's capital budget of, if I could get, a motion to, or a approval of $4,015,131 in capital expenditures, or, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, Tracy, I'm looking at concerned faces, so I just want to make sure I'm not,
Yep.
I'd rather just get it right.
There's one item in here that came up today. And that has to do with
$90,000 district switch gears.
for the switch gears, yeah. The main electrical switch gears.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can that be?
We have to back that out. We have money that's in the budget currently,
It's currently in the budget at 65.
65, and we thought we needed about 90,000.
So you want to switch that to 20, reduce that to 25?
Yes.
So
I
take
think
out
that would-
90, take out 90,000.
Take out 65.
Take out 65,000.
Yes.
Okay, so minus 65. So I just want to make sure before I, Penny, did you have a question?
I did. You guys are sick. We're sorry I wasn't sick again today. But, all right, so I do.
No, we love your questions, Penny.
Okay, so I do
That's
have
why
a
we're here.
question about the carpet in the library.
Yes.
And I would say that in the high school project, that was a controversial carpet when it went down. And I would just want to make certain that we've included a little bit of design money to, in terms of when we, I imagine we're going to put down carpet squares again.
That's correct.
And rather than just replace what we have, are we going to go to, we could use JCJ or to go to somebody and get them to specify what would be an appropriate look for that high school library. And I just want to make sure we've included the funds in that $68,869 to be able to do that, because I know that that engendered an awful lot of discussion.
There's $100,000 in professional services. I'm sure we can use some of that for some of that design work. The number that you see in this budget is strictly tearing up the old and putting in the new.
All right, well, I think that that would be, that's an item where we would want to maybe have an additional couple $1,000s. I don't think it would be a big amount, but I don't know, to make certain that we,
One of the things we
Get
did with this
something.
budget, Penny, was have the engineering services line pulled, sort of aggregated and put into the district level. And that is for a variety of different experts in different areas to use, for us to be able to bring them
so
in.
would we
So
have
could, if
room
it's-
for that? I mean, typically, it's going to be a couple $1,000s, I would think.
And that's
We
why
might be
we
able to
put
get
that
it from
aside.
that.
I think we're going to.
Okay, then I also recommend using JCJ. They are,
I
they've
don't
been
like
great.
them.
I know.
No, they're really doing a
They're
nice
They're
job.
doing a nice
Really
job
nice
with
ways.
with the interiors, and I think Emily's really talented.
I agree.
But she'd have to give us a good price.
Yes.
I was just saying, this goes along with what she was asking, but when we're doing the tech for the library, because I know that they're changing the whole lookup, isn't that part of like the whole new look for the library, with the use and stuff, of looking at what carpet versus the tools and desks? I'm assuming, is that part of that? So that there should be somebody looking and doing all that as they're looking at the new technology and changing the way the library works?
We might just use some more of that $100,000 professional services line. But I do think that's one of the major spaces, and it gives a look and feel to the library, that the school that people should be proud of.
Sorry, we're just recalculating something, so.
So we just want to make sure we have the number right for the motion.
Right.
I just hope the 100,000 covers it.
Do we need to increase
I
that by a couple thousand?
just think a lot of the engineering for HVAC and things of that nature, we'd up that money pretty quick.
Oh, for
We had
105,
planned
that's
on
where it is.
design,
I think you need a design for that. Okay, so
There we go,
maybe
that's
on
it.
the capital budget,
Yeah, we had
Pardon?
Do we need to, I do think a design
Add
for
this
that
together.
carpet is important. It's a huge space,
Oh,
and
yes.
you
And
need
it's
it
the
to.
it's one of the show
It's one of
places
the
of
show
the high
spaces
school.
at the high school, so, I would I would make a motion to increase by $2,500, or $3,000, the professional services line, just to make certain, we can't skimp on, if we got the engineering services without it, I would wanna make certain that we had, the funds to do that properly.
I mean, we can do that, Penny, but that is why we put aside the 100,000, so we can access professional services to design.
Well,
out
I'm
and spec out.
saying I would move, that's in the proposed capital budget, it's 100,000, I would propose increasing that to 103,000.
103.
No, but we're revisiting the original number. I do have 400, so we need to get to the correct number. I'm having, let me just, so I have, Joanne, I'm adding these two together. Is that, am I missing?
Yes, these things.
Okay, okay, so now I understand the difference over here. That's right.
All right, so if I can refocus us, just for a moment. So,
Do we need to add?
the total request was $4,105,131. And Bob, what I heard you say before was that 65,000 of that for the switchgear service is no longer needed because of this year's work that you're doing.
Correct.
Okay. And then Penny, I heard you suggested that we add
$3,000.
$3,000.
Okay, wait, just Jen had a question
Yeah,
first.
I just wanted to clarify, so the design, so Joanne said that the design money, like I was trying to understand, if we're adding the three, which I totally agree, it's a huge space, we need assistance in making sure that's the right thing, but if we have money set aside already for services like that, do we need to add this money? Like, can you just explain that again to me?
So the reason why we put the design fees in is because in the past, we've always included, it's come out of the actual project.
Right.
And we found that it took away from the project, so we put a number of $100,000 aside for our professional services for design of all these many projects.
So we could take the money from that pool for the carpet?
We can.
We could, so I would increase on this, I would increase the engineering services to 103,000.
Because you know
Because that number, the $100,000, as I understand, was arrived at without considering any design fee for the carpet for the high school library.
Okay.
So, and if, there were other design fees that went into it. I mean, in terms of coming up with the estimate of the 100,000.
30-plus projects here.
You're right.
Any other questions?
It would hurt, yeah.
Okay, any other questions on that?
The switchgear is not in here at all, so we have to add a line item
good.
to get that?
We're good with that.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so, I think we've got 4,043,131. Okay. So if I could get, I'd like to approve the 2017-18, well, first we have to move to amend the original, because did we have approval of the original budget or not? So okay, so could I get a motion to approve the 2017-18 superintendent's capital budget of $4,043,131? Could I get a motion? Could I get someone to move? Penny. Second, Hazel. All those in favor? It's It's unanimous. And then, we're good. All right. Okay, now did I lose your agenda? All right, so do I have, next item on the agenda is comments from the public. Do you have anyone wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, if I could announcements of any future business with Dr. Larson.
Sure, generally when our budget meetings, or our board meetings, we have our statement of accounts at the second meeting of the month. However, given the circumstances, we are moving our statement of accounts off to be the first meeting in February instead of staying here to do it today. I know how pressed for time everybody is. Thank you again for rearranging your schedules. We'll also be awarding one of our teachers with a CTE Teacher of the Year award at our board meeting on Monday night in 2 weeks, or a week and a half, and we'll be discussing negotiations as well. So,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, good. Moving on, can I get a motion to adjourn? Penny. Second. Hazel.
You hold on wrong.
All those in favor? All those in favor?
Thank you again.
Thank you.